told my mother what the pastor did to me, but instead of protecting me, she slapped me and told me never to speak of it again. That night, I ran away, and what happened next shocked the whole town. I sat in my room that night, shaking, not from fear, but from the silence that followed. The silence of a mother who chose the church over her own child. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I heard a voice outside my window. His voice. That was the night everything changed. This is my story of betrayal, truth, and the fire it took to be heard.
Before we unravel today's story, make sure to like, comment, and share. You're watching the Global Storyteller Official, where every tale leaves a mark.
The soft hum of evening prayers filled the house as Ruth sat on the edge of her bed, her eyes fixed on the wall. Her Bible lay open beside her, but she hadn't touched it in hours. Her fingers trembled. Her breath was shallow. She had always trusted the church. She had always trusted him. Pastor Nathaniel wasn't just a man of God. He was the man of God in their town. People spoke his name with awe. They said his prayers healed the sick, broke curses, and opened doors. Even Ruth's own mother called him Daddy in the Lord. But today, behind the locked door of his office, everything changed. What should have been a moment of prayer turned into something dark. Ruth tried to speak. She tried to resist. But the moment passed in a blur of fear and confusion. And when it ended, he looked at her. Not with guilt, not with apology, but with calm warning. Don't let the devil speak through you, my daughter. This was spiritual. Tell no one. Now, hours later, Ruth could still feel the echo of his voice in her ears. Her body ached, but her heart hurt more. She had to tell someone, and she knew the only person who might believe her was Mama. That night, when the candles had burned low and the last hallelujah had been whispered, Ruth knocked on her mother's bedroom door. "Mama, can I talk to you?" Her mother, still seated by her small altar, turned with a gentle smile. "Is something wrong?" Ruth's voice cracked. "Yes, Mama. It's about Pastor Nathaniel." The smile faded. "What about him?" Ruth's eyes filled with tears. He hurt me. Church today. He called me into his office and..." Her words broke. "He did something bad to me." Her mother stared at her, unmoving. Ruth continued, her voice trembling. "Mama, I didn't make it up. I swear. He locked the door. He touched me in a way he shouldn't have. I told him to stop." Slap. The sound rang through the room like a bell of betrayal. Ruth gasped, holding her cheek. Her mother's eyes burned. "How dare you lie against a man of God? Do you know how many people he's delivered? Do you want to bring shame on this house?" "I'm not lying, Mama," Ruth sobbed. "Please listen to me." Slap. Her legs gave out. She collapsed to the floor. "You're possessed," her mother whispered. "That's what this is. You're letting demons speak through you. You need deliverance, not attention." Tears streamed down Ruth's face as her mother knelt and began praying loudly, hands raised toward heaven. "Lord, rebuke the evil spirit in my daughter. Cast out every voice of deception." But Ruth no longer heard her. Something inside had gone quiet. She realized in that moment, the house she called home, the mother she trusted, was no longer a safe place. Later that night, Ruth sat in darkness, knees pulled to her chest, staring at her phone screen. She opened a text draft she'd written but never sent. "It happened, just like I feared. I need help." She hovered her thumb over the send button. Then, tap, tap, tap. A soft knock echoed from her bedroom window. She turned slowly. There, in the dim moonlight behind the curtain, stood a shadow, and a familiar voice whispered through the glass. "You really thought you could escape the consequences, Ruth? This is the beginning of her fight. A battle between truth and silence, between power and one girl's voice." Ruth froze. Her thumb hovered above the send button, her chest pounding like thunder in her ears. That voice, that familiar voice outside her window. "You really thought you could escape the consequences, Ruth?" She dropped the phone. Her curtains were thin, but she could make out the shape of a man in a long coat. Tall, broad, standing too close. Her heart stopped. The world spun. She didn't scream. She couldn't. Instead, she crept backward, knees scraping the cold floor. Her body remembered what her mind was still trying to erase. Her hands shook violently. The figure outside didn't move again, just stood, then vanished. Silence returned. But it wasn't peace. It was the type of silence that follows wickedness. Heavy, watching. By morning, Ruth hadn't slept. She sat curled in the corner of her room, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes red and swollen. Her phone lay forgotten beside her. Her mother knocked once and entered, not waiting for permission. "You're not going to church today?" she said flatly, folding her arms. "You've brought enough disgrace already." Ruth didn't reply. Her mother sighed, then added in a softer voice, "Pastor Nathaniel is a man of integrity. Don't let the devil use your dreams to destroy him. He said you've been spiritually troubled lately. He offered to pray for you this evening." Ruth's stomach churned. "He wants to see me again? After what he did?" She clenched her fists. "Mama, please don't make me go near him again." But her mother was already leaving. "I've made my decision, and so should you. This house stands with the word of God. Don't be the one who brings it down." That evening, Ruth ran. She didn't tell anyone. She packed only one thing, her old school notebook, the one where she had started writing everything down. Every moment, every detail. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew where she couldn't stay. The first person she thought of was Aunty Bisi, her mother's distant cousin, a nurse who lived on the other side of town. They weren't close, but Ruth remembered her once saying, "If anything ever goes wrong, come to me." It was nearly 9 p.m. when Ruth arrived at the compound. She knocked weakly, once, twice, again. The door opened. "Ruth!" Aunty Bisi blinked in surprise, her eyes scanning the girl's face. "What happened?" Ruth fell into her arms and sobbed. "Please don't send me back. I can't stay there. I just can't." Bisi didn't ask questions immediately. She guided Ruth inside, made her tea, locked all the doors and sat her down. "Talk to me." And for the first time, Ruth told her story, the whole thing. The pastor, the closed door, the silence, the threat, her mother's reaction, the visit at the window. By the end, Bisi's eyes were no longer calm. "That man," she said softly. "He's done this before." Ruth's eyes widened. "What?" Bisi looked down. "There was another girl, years ago, but her parents made it disappear. She left the church, left the town. But this time," Bisi continued, rising to her feet, "he won't get away with it." Later that night, Bisi opens a locked drawer and pulls out an envelope labeled, "Confidential, do not burn." Inside are photos, a recording, and a journal page. She looks up at Ruth and says quietly, "You're not alone. And now we fight back." Ruth couldn't breathe. She sat frozen on the bed, staring at the window where the voice had come from. Was she imagining things? She ran to the curtain and flung it open. But the night was still. The street lamp flickered weakly. No figure, no footsteps, just the wind rustling the old mango tree across the compound. She backed away slowly and locked the window. Her phone buzzed on the bed. It was a reply from Aunty Bisi. "Come now. My door is open." She didn't waste time. She wore her slippers, threw on her sweater, and disappeared into the night. This time, she didn't look back. Aunty Bisi welcomed her with open arms and locked the door behind her. Ruth dropped into the sofa, drained and shaking. "You said, he's done it before?" Ruth whispered. Bisi nodded. "Yes, but nobody talks about it. One girl left the choir and disappeared. Another one got sent to stay with her uncle in another state. People just cover it up." "But why?" Ruth asked, tears threatening again. "Why would they protect him?" "Because he's powerful," Bisi said bitterly. "Because he has connections. Because people would rather silence a girl than question a man of God." Ruth looked down. "Maybe I should just forget. Maybe it's too dangerous." Bisi stood up, firm. "No, that's what they want you to do. But you're not alone. I've been collecting things. saving evidence. And if you're ready, we can expose him. Ruth hesitated. What kind of evidence? Bisi went into her bedroom and returned with the confidential envelope. Inside were old text messages, anonymous letters from other girls, a photo taken through a curtain showing Pastor Nathaniel holding someone too close, too long. Then there was the recording. Bisi clicked play. It was audio, muffled, but clear enough. Pastor Nathaniel's voice. You know the blessing won't flow if you keep resisting. Just close your eyes. Let the Spirit move. Ruth's hands trembled. It was real. It wasn't just her. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Not from pain this time, but from the relief of being believed. The next morning, Bisi made calls. Quiet ones. She contacted a lawyer she trusted, a female journalist, an NGO that specialized in helping young women fight abuse. Slowly, a circle of protection began to form around Ruth. But not everyone was happy. That evening, as they returned from the police station to file an early report, they found Bisi's front gate open. The lock was broken. Inside, drawers had been ransacked, and the envelope was gone. Ruth's heart dropped. They knew. On the wall, written in red marker, were the words, "Liars will burn." They slept at a hotel that night. Ruth lay on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made a mistake by speaking up. But then Bisi turned to her and said, "This is how evil survives, Ruth, by fear. But guess what? You're not afraid anymore, and that makes you more powerful than him." For the first time in days, Ruth closed her eyes and felt a small flicker of strength in her chest. She wasn't alone. The next morning, her phone buzzes again. This time, it's her mother. "They've suspended Pastor Nathaniel from the church. I hope you're happy now. You've destroyed everything." And then a second message. "Don't bother coming back here." The hotel room felt colder after Ruth read the messages. "They've suspended Pastor Nathaniel from the church. I hope you're happy now. You've destroyed everything. Don't bother coming back here." Ruth stared at the screen, numb. Even now, even after all that's happened, her mother still didn't believe her. It wasn't just painful. It was like being abandoned all over again. "She'll come around," Bisi said gently, placing tea in front of her. "But right now, she's protecting a lie she's been fed her whole life." Ruth didn't respond. Her heart was too heavy. That same day, the NGO sent a team to help Ruth file a full report. A trained therapist met with her. They spoke for hours, not just about what happened, but how it made her feel. For the first time, Ruth began to see she hadn't done anything wrong. She was a survivor, not a curse, not a shame. But things outside weren't so calm. By the next Sunday, the church gates were surrounded by whispers. Some said Pastor Nathaniel had traveled. Others said he was on a spiritual retreat. But those who knew the truth began to murmur. 2 more girls came forward. One quietly messaged the NGO. Another one walked straight into Bisi's clinic and broke down in her arms. The wall of silence was cracking. Meanwhile, Ruth's face was kept out of public view, for now. But the journalist covering the case had begun publishing coded reports, describing the abuse allegations without revealing her name. One article ended with, "This is not a war against faith. This is a cry for truth. The question is, will the community listen to the victim or protect the predator?" But not everyone liked the shift. That night, a crowd gathered outside Bisi's compound. Some held banners that read, "Touch not my anointed. The devil is using our women." They banged on the gate. They shouted curses. One woman even screamed, "I raised my children in that church. You can't tear it down with gossip." Bisi refused to let Ruth come outside. Instead, she stood at the gate alone. "If you really believe in God," she told them, "then you should also believe that truth never hides forever." The crowd eventually scattered, but the message was clear. There would be no justice without war. The next day, Ruth was invited for a secret hearing with church elders and legal officers. They said it wasn't a trial, just a spiritual reconciliation meeting. Bisi warned her not to go alone. They took a lawyer. and a representative from the women's rights group. Inside the church hall, Ruth sat quietly across from men who had once laid hands on her in prayer. One of them leaned forward and asked, "Are you sure you weren't confused, child? Sometimes the enemy tricks our mind." Ruth looked him dead in the eye. "I was there. I know what happened. And I'm not confused." There was silence. Then someone passed a sealed envelope across the table. Inside was a letter from Pastor Nathaniel. "To protect the church from scandal, I will step down until the truth is clear. May God judge all hearts accordingly." He hadn't denied it, but he hadn't confessed either. And still, the elders called it a wise and humble move. Ruth left the hall with fire in her chest. No apology, no justice, just silence and shame. That night, Bisi sat Ruth down with the two new girls who had come forward. Each one shared their story, different details, same pattern. One of them looked Ruth in the eye and said, "If you hadn't spoken, I never would have found the courage." Ruth's eyes filled with tears, and in that moment she realized she hadn't lost everything. She had sparked a movement. 3 weeks passed. The town felt different now. People still spoke in whispers, but the whispers had changed. Where once Ruth's name was spoken with doubt, now it was carried with caution. Respect even. The church held an emergency board election. Pastor Nathaniel never returned. He had traveled abroad, they said, but insiders confirmed he fled after receiving a court summons. Ruth wasn't smiling, but her silence was no longer fear. It was power. On a quiet morning, the local news aired a live report. Today, the former head pastor of Living Fire Assembly faces formal charges after 3 victims submitted consistent testimonies backed by recorded evidence. While many in the community are still divided, legal experts say the case is strong. Ruth turned off the TV. She didn't want to see his face anymore. That same afternoon, there was a soft knock at Bisi's front door. When Ruth opened it, she froze. Her mother stood there holding a nylon bag. Her wrapper looked tired. Her eyes even more so. "Mama?" Her mother said nothing for a long moment. Then she looked away. "I brought your favorite soup. The agusi you used to like." Ruth didn't move. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you," her mother said quietly. "I was scared. Of the shame. Of losing everything. I thought I was protecting us. But I was protecting the wrong person." Ruth's lips trembled. "You hit me, Mama." Tears slid down her mother's face. "I know, and I carry that every day now. But I'm here. If you still have space for me, I want to walk with you, even if it's behind you." Ruth turned away, wiping her eyes. The weight of years fell off her shoulders, not fully, but enough. She opened the door wider. "Come inside." A few days later, Ruth returned to school. The principal, who had read about the case, welcomed her personally. "We're proud of you," she said. "Don't let anyone dim that light." Ruth nodded, holding her books close. As she walked through the halls, a few girls looked up at her. Some with tears, some with admiration. One girl slipped her a note under the desk. It read, "He tried to do it to me too, but I ran. Thank you for speaking up." Ruth folded the note and placed it carefully into her notebook, the same one she used to write everything. Now she began a new page. On a Sunday afternoon, Ruth stood in front of a small crowd at a youth conference hosted by the NGO. She took a deep breath. "I'm not here to tell a sad story," she said, voice steady. "I'm here to remind every girl listening that your voice is not small, even when the world calls you a liar, even when your own family shuts the door." She paused, then smiled softly. "Truth always finds its way back, and when it does, the darkness can't stay." The crowd clapped. Her mother sat in the front row, eyes full of tears, the proud kind this time. And Bisi. She stood in the back, hands folded, quietly nodding. Ruth didn't win because the world changed. She won because she did. And now, she would never be silent again. Moral lesson: silence protects the guilty, but truth, no matter how painful, sets the innocent free. Never be afraid to speak out, even when the people you love choose comfort over justice. Because healing begins the moment you decide your voice matters. They called me a liar. They said I was possessed, rebellious, ungrateful. But I wasn't any of those things. I was a girl who spoke the truth, and the truth refused to stay buried. I lost my home. I lost my mother's trust. But I found something stronger, my voice. And even if the world never claps for me, I will never be silent again. The end.